Oh, thank you, Tequila Man. He was like number one, number one. So hey guys, thank you for coming in today. We're starting on threes on Saturday. I'll put that schedule change on Twitch that way you guys can see it. But that was just what me and Meat and Beans were kind of going over right now. We're trying to figure out how do we want to do this? Do we want to be able to do it at this time and that certain time? And has two kids and one with him, and I have three that will be back here. So we're just trying to make sure we have everything perfect. I think I hear my echo on your end. I wonder if
Yeah,
it's
I'm
me.
fixing it.
Yeah, no
No,
worries.
I'm fixing it.
With that being said, Meat and Beans is here. He's fixing the little echo. Other than that, what are you guys up to today? Today is going to be about electric vehicle and our thoughts on it, everything we love about them and hate about them, and then above all, where we think it's going to be going in the future. If that makes any sense. You guys are following us. We have Discord. We have Twitch. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat here so you guys can see it. And yes, that's all right there. You should perfection. But yeah, you're still there, Meat and Beans.
I am.
And just real quick, just a quick discussion here. Can you tell everybody how you got that name, Meat and Beans?
Yeah. I was um so I was Shade. That was my first name
Yeah,
back when I was like 13 or something like that. But super common. Everyone had it. Could never get it anywhere. So like I would do Shade 133 and stuff like that, which is just not unique.
yeah,
Um and then at work, one of my bosses, when he fresh came on, he was like, "Oh, so my name, I won't say it, but basically my first name and my last name are exactly similar except for one letter difference."
yeah.
So he was like, "Oh, so n times two because they both start with an n."
Oh, that's
They're
good.
like n
Yeah,
times two. So I went for nx2 as a name for a while, which was all right. It was just really hard to brand though. So I got some friends talking and whatnot, and I was like, "Hey, I need a new online handle or new brand name that like
yeah.
it's brandable, it's unique, it's generic enough that nobody's like got it trademarked or anything like that." And I went bowling with some friends, and we literally had a list of like 20 something plus names, and Meat and Beans was one of it, and so here's the thing, it was never meant to be like a sexual thing, but of course people made it sexual. It was
Yep.
the hey mister, how's it going, the most of it had to do with like, when you think about the meat and beans, it's like the meat and potatoes, it's
Yeah, that's what I would think, but because of
hmm
society and the way we are now, the first one sounds like something else now. I wanted to clear that up with everybody on here. Hey, Jericho. Hey, Maudea and Baby for Leah. I just wanted to clarify. Hey, Turtle. You actually look, the both of you actually look just like my next best friends. Aw, that's nice. I'm glad you want us to be your best friend. I wanted everyone to get clear up on your name because I don't want them to think it means something else. Because obviously I knew it didn't mean that, but they probably all thought the same thing. So
yeah,
kind of clear that up real quick.
it was just something that was supposed to symbolize a vast majority of things, meaning
Yeah,
I'm not just a Call of Duty streamer
yeah,
or Minecraft streamer. I will stream everything from Call of Duty to podcasts to survival games to
mm,
board games, RTS. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna stream what I want to stream at that time. I
yeah.
might stream working on a vehicle at some point. I've thought about that.
Dude, that would be
Um,
great. I really think that would be good because it would also be cool. Like, hey, if you could get it scheduled when they're working on stuff, when they're like, hey, do you want to do like change your battery or not change your battery, but that's something simple or change your oil today. You know what I mean? So,
right.
one last thing, and then we'll get started talking about the electric car. That's what we're talking about. I just want you to check your DMs real quick and then there.
Sure.
Start go. You can just
No, I
tell me
cannot.
yes. All right, perfect. That is an amazing feature then that you were talking about. About
Yep.
yeah, that microphone's actually crazy. So that's good. So anyway, going back to what we were going to talk today about electric cars. Do you think they are the future, or do you think they're going to be short-lived, in your opinion? I'm going to start that with you.
1000% the future.
Yep. Yeah. Why is
So,
that?
if you kind of step back
Hmm.
and let's say you imagine yourself as an alien looking down on the world and you're able to see everything since like let's say 1940 to now,
Yeah.
and you decide to look at it in a way of like, okay, well, tech or just general advancement, where were they in 1940 versus where are they now? And you ignore all the war and you ignore all the other BS, but
Yeah.
um, you go, okay, well, they were pretty much in the height of the industrial age in 1940, and they're in an extreme technical age now. And it was more like 1980, I would say, on is where it just went off. That's when cell phones and GPS. Well, GPS was around before then, but it became commercialized, and all this stuff all of a
Hmm.
sudden just started flooding humanity super quick. You the logical route would be to continue going down that road with technology, and a lot of technology is not mechanical anymore, it is
Yep.
electrical.
Mm.
And the one of the in my opinion, one of the main reasons why we're moving towards electrical things is because of extreme customizability and extreme control.
I think
um
it's more control, if I'm being honest with you. The customize, but it's the
yeah,
control, the being able to do a lot more things with it. And
absolutely.
and the
you
other
build
part,
you build a machine, it's going to do that one thing and that one thing
exactly.
only.
Yes, exactly.
But
Just somebody just said this, and I just want to point this out. We are
sure,
going to do a part two on the RV. They were like, "Oh, I missed it. Had some questions. We'll do a part two because we ran out of time." Yes, but we'll go back to that. Don't worry. But continuing on, the fact that you can have complete control on,
yeah,
you know, go ahead.
programmability, programmability.
Yes. Yeah.
So think about it this way. This is Tesla is actually an amazing example. When their car first came out, sure it had or actually, so the Roadster was basic, like a basic car. It was electric but basic. It didn't have all those crazy, features that like the Model S has, and the 3 and the X and all that, and the Y now. But when the Model S came out, sure it had the cool screen and it had like some built-in features right away. But if you remember, it didn't have autopilot. It didn't have like crazy features like the summon the vehicle and all that stuff. That got added in later with software. That's the
Yeah.
main reason why I think a lot of that's what I meant by customizability is a company could build something as long as they leave room, they can update it with software to add new features, and it's live over the air. You don't have to bring it in and get it retrofitted with something new or different or anything
Hmm.
like that. Model X um, is another crazy example where you have like the farting horn or changing the horn and the farting of the in individual seats and stuff like that. Um, Sorry, can you give me a moment? I gotta step out
Yeah.
for a second.
Go ahead. But what he's talking about is very interesting. We haven't had with a lot of cars in general, and it's just electric things in general. A lot of things are mechanical, and some things are always going to be mechanical. Don't think that we're going to get away from oil completely. That's not going to happen. To make most of this stuff is going to require some form of oil, but I don't think we're going to be there. We're not going to be as dependent on it as we was before, or as we are now. In terms of we need oil in our car, we need fuel in our car, we need our brake lines, which we'll still have brake lines on an electrical, but you're going to see us kind of move towards that, where have to start looking towards, instead of using fossil fuel, trying to figure out how to create this renewable energy, which is going to get complicated. It really will be. We're probably going to go from trying to use solar, which I don't think is going to be enough just yet. The biggest problem with solar is being able to absorb enough and do all that. All our plastics come from oil. True. Very true. And it becomes basically we have to change as a society. And we have. We've done it many times. When people were talking about the horses back in the day, no one thought a machine would ever be able to replace a horse completely. They just didn't think it was possible. The way the horse is built and everything. See you later, Deadpool. Thank you for the support. So it's going to be very interesting to see this next evolution of change when it comes to vehicles. And vehicles have stayed the same for a very long time, and a lot of mechanical things have as well. So it's going to be interesting how much that truly, and how far we keep in the future. The biggest thing is we were talking about this with the um, electric car is the amount of stuff that's being from it is ridiculous. You're going from not having an oil pan, oil line, not having a fuel pump, fuel line, a fuel filter. All of that is just going away because of the accessibility of just having an electric car and not need that. And that is unreal and unheard of. That's why a lot of people just didn't really believe it was possible because it doesn't really make sense, does it? For us to go from having a fuel pump, a water pump, um, fuel filter. We also have a transmission. We have transmission fluid. We have gears. We've had gears for I don't know how long, for centuries. And I don't mean that like, well, the car has only been around. No, I mean like for centuries we've had to use gears to do stuff, and now it's wired and electrical, and it's not the same. And that's why the huge change in all of this is unreal. Yeah, it doesn't seem correct, but we have redefine what essentially the anatomy of a car. It does. And it's also scary because a lot of people are like, they don't want to do that. They don't want to go to a new thing that they don't know. And that's kind of what it's happened. Like there was that, when everyone was talking about cryptocurrency, which we'll have a podcast about that, where they're like, the guy comes up, he's like, I have gold. And the guy was like, no, I want a chicken or I want a rock or something like that. You
I'm
back,
back,
man?
by the way, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's gonna be
Hilarious
this
video.
yeah, it's gonna be the same thing with cars. Like right now, no one really like, oh well, I don't want that right now because this is cheaper. You're gonna see the turnaround. You're gonna see more and more companies. I will say this before I'm gonna give it back to you, man. Before I go any farther, Tesla's gonna face a lot of competition once their competition, which they're trying to do by 2025, 2030, is go fully electrical. Once they do that, that's when we're going to start seeing insanely like cars where we're like, oh, a $14,000 electrical car won't be so unfeasible by that time. But you can go ahead and continue where you're talking about basically being able to customize and programmable. And I was just telling them like we've had gears how long? Centuries. And to remove a lot of gears now, like the bare minimum in most cars, electric cars, is the battery, and they do have an engine, but it's not the same. And on top of that, it's just like so many things are removed from it than a typical car. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at a traditional vehicle, you have the engine,
Hmm.
and then you have the transmission. You have, let's just assume it's rear-wheel drive for simplicity.
Yeah.
And then you have a drive shaft going to the rear, and you have a differential, which basically changes the direction of rotation from front to back to left to right. And so that differential has gears. Your transmission, if it's an automatic, it has a type of gearing basically, but it's gearing nonetheless. And then you have your engine, which is just a giant rotating mass. Um, that's a
Hmm.
lot of moving parts. Now, sure, over what the first car was late 1800s, if I remember right, the
Yeah.
first prototype or something like that. So we've had over 100 years to perfect the vehicle, and we've gotten pretty dang good at it. I
Yeah.
mean, there's vehicles out there that, for example, there was a Toyota Tundra pickup truck that a guy brought in for general maintenance, and it had 1,000,000 miles on it. 1,000,000 miles on it, and all it needed was reverse to be fixed in the transmission. I think he needed an alternator at some point and a couple batteries, and then the rest was regular maintenance like oil
Yeah.
changes and brake jobs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, that's insane, a million
Yeah.
miles.
You,
So now, when you look at an electric vehicle,
yeah.
the drivetrain is essentially just motors, and it
Yeah.
depends on how they design it. But you can have the motors at the wheels, and that's it. There's no other moving parts besides the motors and your bearing where the wheel is, and the spinning motion of that, and the turning capabilities of the front wheels. But other than that, that's it. That's your drivetrain. That is a lot less to go wrong, and it's a lot more localized.
Just to point this out,
Everything else is electric.
yeah, to point this out, like someone just made a comment. I just noticed that how modern vehicles are small, made out of so much plastic, they are just not as safe. And I feel like getting rid of the engine weight can make them even less safe. To kind of go deeper into just everyone's going to have their own, I think it's FSD. I forgot what the technical term is for Tesla's, not autopilot, but essentially their computer that predicts stuff. I feel like the more companies get these computers that are scanning stuff, we're going to have less wrecks and more of autonomous driving, which is something we're
Yep.
going to love. Right now, you're like, well, I want to be able to do what I want to do. That you'll still be able to, but it's going to be great when going places only requires the distance. You know what I mean? Like there are no wrecks because everyone has a computer in their car now. Because I think this will be something like 2035, 2040, maybe even longer, maybe 2050, where you can't drive a car without a computer because the computer is going to be watching everything and predicting things. You've seen some Teslas avoid wrecks before they happen because they can
Yep.
sense that that car is messing up and they slow down immediately. So I think if you're worried about them going faster and being unsafe, that's going to happen with any car. Even, you see people with sports cars wreck out and do all kind of things. But like, I feel like I wouldn't really worry about the engine weight making it less safe. I would be more focused on how much more advanced is the computer going to get. And on top of that, the fact that they can update your computer,
Yep.
it can send you updates. Like I remember watching the Joe Rogan podcast and he's talking to Elon. Elon's like, yeah, we're coming out with a cheetah mode. It will lower your car suspension down and you'll get in an angle like a cheetah and you'll take off quicker. It'll save you like 0.07th of a second. And that's
Yeah. Because they
ridiculous.
can control the
Yep.
full suspension, the
Mm-hmm.
torque at any given moment. And that's another good thing about electrical motors is you can have all of the torque literally 1 second and none of the torque the next second. It's on, off, instant, no wind up, no lag, no build up, no nothing. I want to throw a point out there about cars becoming more plasticky and lighter and
Yeah.
all that. It actually increases safety. So there's
Mm-hmm.
something that people always thought is like, well, I drive a tank, so I'm going to be safe.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about that. You might be safe if you hit another vehicle that is half the size of yours and weighs half the weight because you're going to do all the damage to them and not much to you.
Yeah.
But there's also a saying, it's not the speed that kills you, it's the sudden stop.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have done recently, and by recently I mean like in probably the last 20 years, is by making cars more plasticky, and lighter, they're using lighter materials. They're doing that on purpose to make crumple zones in a vehicle. And
Yes.
those crumple zones, what they do is they kind of act as like a little cushion when you hit something. So imagine you're driving 75 miles an hour down the freeway and all of a sudden one of those giant concrete divider things just
Mm-hmm.
shows up right in front of your vehicle. Zero slowing down, zero stopping. You hit that thing at exactly 75 miles an hour. You go from 0 to 75 instantly. Unfortunately, with even today's technology, the likelihood of you passing away because of that is still extremely high.
Yeah.
But it's not 100%. It was 100% 20 years ago when the cars were all metal and didn't have really much crumple zones or anything like that because your body was your crumple zone at that point. There was no softening of the impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
So getting a car to become lighter not only helps with like fuel economy and stuff like that, less rolling mass all helps. Um, but it also allows less mass to hit other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to, there's only so much you can do. But going back to people are worried about that, I would also point out the better the technology gets, the less wrecks we're going to have if I'm because
Yep.
it's just like there won't be too many. The reason that you have semis getting huge wrecks, the reason you have anybody who gets in wrecks, it's the driver's fault. Very, very rarely is it the car or anything else. So if you're driving a car that obviously knows how to keep in the lanes and obviously can avoid wrecks, that's going to drop a lot. I wouldn't worry about how fast my car can go, but I will point out it is fast. It is unreal. That's one thing I need to bring up. Might jump to this one. because I think the fastest Tesla is the one 0 to 60 is the one that's about to come out recently.
The new Roadster, yeah.
Yeah, it's this one's 200 miles an hour. Sure that this
0
one.
to 60, if I remember right, is under 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it up real
That's
quick and then switch it over so you guys can see
stupid
what we're talking
insane.
about. Yeah, yeah, here it is. So if this works today, see if you guys should be able to do this. There you go. So Tesla's Model S Plaid is the fastest accelerating car production car yet. This was January 27, 21. It should be able to go 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. I'm pretty sure there's another one, like you guys said, it's 2 seconds, but still, it peaks power of 1,020 horsepower. Do you guys can y'all see that? Like 1,000? That is unreal, man, to go that
Hmm.
fast in a car that has no engine, really. I mean, it has an engine technically. They have a technical term for what their engine is. But to think about that, like 0 to 60, I don't, this is a country song, but 0 to 60 in 5.2, right? That was fast back in the day and still kind of is. But to go from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, that's just,
So I'll tell you this: the fastest 0 to 60 I've ever done was about somewhere around 3.5
hmm
seconds or something like that,
gotta.
and it was in my 2004 Subaru Impreza STI, built up as much as I can get it at the time, about 455 horsepower, all-wheel drive,
Mhm.
and it still technically could be faster because when I would launch, I would get some wheel spin, or it would stutter a little bit, or weight shifted didn't work right. When you have a computer that can control the torque to the ground, the wheel spin at all four wheels individually, independent of each other, and can control the weight transfer with the suspension and everything within a fraction of a second, that's perfection.
Yeah.
Now, there is a caveat to things being computer controlled, and this is something that I think a lot of people are scared of because they don't really understand.
hmm
Oh yeah, there's the Roadster with 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. That's
Jesus Christ.
stupid
250
insane.
mile top speed, 620-mile range.
I
Holy
mean,
shit.
so I don't want to do the math right now, but the amount of G forces that that your body would experience from that 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds is insane.
It'd be like a rocket, right?
You're
Or like a roller coaster
you
at that point.
it
You know what? Let me look that up. What's
it's
the fastest roller coaster? You know what I
it would
mean?
be close to like a roller coaster taking a tight turn at high speeds. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's nowhere near like fighter pilot type
Yeah,
G
no, but I
forces where you need
mean,
G suits and stuff like that. But it's a lot. It's enough to where you can barely breathe.
yeah,
It's insane. But
max speed 250 miles an hour. I mean, I know that's not,
yeah.
but for an electric car, like think about this. Like I remember when people were mocking these cars, like Top Gear in the UK was constantly mocking them and really didn't believe in them, and got in a lot of fire under for it. You had to go to court for a while for it and everything. So Elon
Oh yeah.
Musk and Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson in particular, do not like each other. But they got the car on again, and some of the things that he said back then were valid points, Jeremy Clarkson. But I'll be honest with you, his two other co-workers, which is Richard Hammond and James May, they both own a Tesla. He doesn't because he's strictly, I want to hear the engine and I want to shift it, which is kind of like, old school. And I can
A
kind of get that
purist.
to a point. Yeah. And that's exactly what he said, actually. And, but when I see his coworkers getting him and loving them, and I see, when I do events, I don't see the fancy, I used to see the fancy cars, like, the nice BMW and Audis, no more. They're Teslas. When, Jason Taylor came to do an event for us, he pulled up in a Tesla Roadster. And I was like, this is the future. If these people are buying them now and, they're trying to get them and keep them for a longer time, it's definitely got to be the future. And the charging thing is becoming more and more not a problem when they have them mapped out for you and how quickly they're charging. That was the other big thing. They weren't charging quickly. And I feel like that's not going to be a much problem anymore. But what do you think about us having enough energy to charge them in terms of where it's coming from?
So that's the controversy
Hmm.
right now is the fact that a great majority of our, or at least the United States, is power grid is fossil fuel.
Yep.
Um, so you know when the people talk about like, well, I got a Tesla, I'm green, I'm saving the environment. Yeah, actually, you are. Um, a lot of people don't realize how much emissions a vehicle puts out, and I'm not just talking about out the tailpipe.
Hmm.
You have cars that leak oil, and they will leak oil for hundreds of thousands of miles, and people just keep putting oil in them. They don't care. That oil is polluting our soil in our neighborhoods, on our streets, around farms and stuff like that. You got coolant, which is also
Hmm.
extremely poisonous
Yes,
to mammals.
that's huge because that's why a lot of people don't realize about coolant because very rarely do they have leaks, but it is unreal because animals don't know the difference. They don't know, and then they'll try to drink it,
It
and
tastes sweet.
yeah, they die.
It tastes sweet.
Yeah, they die almost instantly, or not instantly, but like they're not going to live the next day.
Yeah.
But that think about that. He's saying all that stuff. So far, what if you said that a regular vehicle has that the um, electric car won't? Because you just said there won't be a radiator in the electrical car, if I remember correctly.
There is.
There
There
is.
there actually well, there is in Tesla at least. The reason being is because you have to keep those batteries cool. The
Right.
thing with batteries currently, and this is actually the one thing I'm most excited about Tesla, not their car, not the potential of 20 years from now being everything electric and automated or luxurious or any of that stuff, not the technology. It's a simple fact that what they're trying to do is forcing them and other battery manufacturers to innovate batteries. Batteries have been the same for years, tons of years. And you had lead acid, and then now you have lithium ion. Lithium ion obviously is way better than lead acid, but it's still crap, absolute crap. So what they're having to do is they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I recharge this battery as quick as possible? How can I pull
Mhm.
insane amount of current from this battery without it exploding on me? And how do I deal with extreme cold and how do I deal with extreme heat? All of those problems is forcing them to come up with solutions. Now, currently, Teslas do have problem in extreme cold.
Yeah.
The if it's negative, let's say it's negative 20 um, degrees outside, and you park your Tesla overnight and you get into it in the morning. And let's say you parked it at 100% charged. You get into it in the morning, it will not be 100% charge. It will have lost charge. And in some cases, completely died to the point where you can't even, like, you could plug it in and it won't charge. That's another bad thing about batteries is you
In
do
below
not
freezing
ever want to let
temperatures,
them run.
or like
Yeah.
yeah, so like when it gets below 32 degrees, they've noticed some problems like that. Because here I am wanting to get one in New York, and I guess I need to keep it in the garage, or is it just driving general? Because I didn't know that about them struggling in the cold. I have heard about them not being able to open their doors because of the cold, which happens to almost every car, if I'm being honest with
Yeah, that's why I didn't bring that up.
you. Yeah,
That's not a Tesla thing
yeah,
at all.
yeah. Everyone thinks it is. They're like, I can't get in
It's
my car, and it's like that's what happens to your car in the cold. But yeah,
yeah,
so it's
period.
only at night, like when it's not running, or can you
It
still drive? I'm
no,
about to look it
when
up.
you're driving it, here's
Yeah.
the thing: when you're driving it, you're pulling current from it, which is heating up the batteries.
Hmm.
So driving it in cold climate is actually not that bad. Driving it in warm climate though is bad.
Yeah.
They overheat quite easily. So there's I forget I think it's the What's Inside family. They're YouTube family of YouTubers and they live in Utah. And a
Hmm.
lot of the times they'll drive from Utah to Vegas and sometimes in the summer it will get, kind of like Phoenix heat, 120 something degrees outside.
Yeah.
And he would drive his Tesla usually would be able to drive almost all the way to Las Vegas without a charge. But it got to a point one time where he was driving back from Las Vegas and it overheated. It wouldn't let him go above 55 miles an hour. And it kept complaining at him. It kept like sounding alarms or like things on the screen and stuff like that. And he was losing battery quick, super quick. On top of that, everything in a Tesla is electric. Your AC is electrically, I mean, it's still like a conventional AC system with a compressor, but it's controlled electrically. Your heater is also still electric. It's or actually, I think they have heat pumps now in the brand new models, but um, all that extra strain on that battery while you're also driving, and every time you go to brake, you use regenerative braking. That's
Yeah.
all heating up that battery, and the coolant system just cannot keep up with it. So it's winter storage is bad, summer driving is bad. So
So
that's stuff that they need to figure out.
winter storage would kind of suck because if I have it in my garage, I have it plugged in, it's not keeping the battery warm or recharging it, is it? I
No,
mean,
keeping it plugged in the winter in the garage, as long as your garage is not below freezing or anything like that, should be perfectly fine.
as I was reading
Um,
this, watch for the snowflake icon. A blue snowflake icon may appear on your touchscreen if your battery is too cold to access all of its stored energy. When this icon is
yep,
displayed, you may notice that the battery power and regenerative braking are limited. Once the battery
yep.
is warm, the snowflake will disappear. Charging, driving, and everything will go back to normal. But this was interesting, and I'll share this real quick. Well, I thought this was awfully because we're talking about it. In wintertime, reduce energy loss by driving conservatively and limiting energy use in cabin. This helps with range and efficiency all year round, but even more so during the colder months. So they want you to drive
Yep.
at moderate speeds, limit frequent and rapid acceleration. That makes sense considering using chill mode. But if possible, lower the cabin temperature setting and use seat heaters for added warmth. That seems like a lot of work for a car that you're worried about the battery dying on you. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
that's very interesting that they are struggling in ice right, or at least
Yeah. So
having
you
that
got to think
problem.
about this is you got to think about what a battery is. A lot of people think a battery is a storage device. It's actually not. A battery is a device that produces electricity through chemical reaction. And so you have I don't know like the actual chemical makeup of a battery, but let's say you have molecules, obviously, inside of the battery. When you cool anything down, when you pull heat from anything, you are slowing those molecules down. So that's why air gets more dense, water gets more dense, it freezes because they come really close together and bond. Um, so when you're thinking about the chemical makeup of a battery, that's exactly why you don't get that full access to all of your energy, is because it has literally compressed and it cannot release. So one thing I heard that they're trying to do is, in addition to a cooling system, which it already has, is a heating system.
Hmm.
And I think they're trying to figure out how to do that without compromising the energy usage. So if let's say you get into your car, it's negative 20 degrees outside and it still works, it turns on and everything. You have, let's just say for ease of use, you have 100% battery, right? But your
Yeah,
car is limiting you severely because it knows it cannot pull the amount of power it would need to pull to do like a ludicrous mode pull or something like
yeah,
that. Um, so it goes, well, I need to heat up the battery. So it pulls some power that out of the reserve that you already have.
yep,
So let's say you
yep.
can use 50% of it. It needs to pull 25% of it just to heat up the battery. So what do you do during that time? You can barely drive the thing. You can't use your heaters, you can't use your heated seats or anything like that. You're sitting there freezing while it's trying to heat itself up.
So if you don't
So they're
have,
trying to come around that problem.
I guess for now, you don't have a garage, do not get one because you can easily just make the garage stay around 50 or 60 degree, and that would still be
Yeah,
fine, I think, especially with.
absolutely.
But one thing I wanted to
Absolutely.
like point out here, will I be bad really drive to work and plug it back in? I don't know if you would want to. I don't think anything would happen, especially like people are worried like if it's raining, can I plug it in? The outlet's not going to shock you to death. When you see it, it plugs in kind of
Yeah.
safely and everything.
Yep.
And everyone's like, you're already freezing in your gas vehicle anyways. Yeah, but at least you can move, and it's not
You
recommended
can
for some
drive.
cars. Yeah, but you can drive.
Yeah. So with modern day vehicles, and I want to say since the 80s, basically since modern day fuel injection, there is absolutely zero need to warm up a gas or diesel powered motor.
Yeah,
Zero reason.
everyone
You are
says they still
literally
do.
wasting.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, tons of people still do. You are literally wasting gas. You are causing extra wear and tear on your motor because while you're sitting there idling, That is when your motor is at its least efficiency, absolute worst efficiency. And it does take longer to warm up your vehicle unless you start driving it. So when you start driving it, when it's cold, because computers are, or because um, fuel injection is computer controlled, it monitors your timing, it monitors your fuel, it monitors the air intake and all of that stuff, and it can alter things to where it can stay safe. Now, can you get in your vehicle when it's, freezing outside and start it up and rev that thing to the moon? No, don't do that. You will
Yeah.
absolutely blow it up
Yeah.
because
You
your
will make it
oil's
very
not warm or
angry.
anything yet.
Yep. Yeah, your oil's gonna
But
move.
you get in your vehicle, you throw that thing in reverse and drive and just start going. Guarantee you within 5 minutes it's warm enough to where the heater is actually giving you, decently warm air
Yeah,
versus you let it sit for 20 minutes and it's barely warm enough.
exactly. Well, I was gonna point this out. So I wanted to show everybody this. If you're watching, this is something I don't think people understand. So 2015 is roughly 6 years ago, right? So I want to point this
Yep.
out. So if you get a Tesla, right, 6 years ago, here's a Model S 2015, 30,000, 88,000 miles. Now, for comparison, I picked a Subaru because they're one of the longer lasting cars as well. But like most cars, like Toyota, Honda, Subaru, you hear them long lasting. Everyone runs into problem. How much do you think that 2015 Subaru is?
Is it just a base model Impreza?
Yeah, just a base or Subaru Forester. How much do you think it's going to be for
Subaru
same
Forester
around the same miles?
2015.
Yeah, around the same miles, all that.
I would say probably around anywhere between 10 and 15,000.
He's pretty close, guy. So you got one at like 9,000. You got a couple right here. Now look at that. Because someone made the comment earlier, like you're not going to get your money back, or they're both depreciating at the same time. They're not. There's a different value when you look at this right here, and you look at this right here on how much it didn't depreciate compared to. Now I do know it's the Model S, but just look at that, how they maintain still such a high price with the miles that they have right there versus a regular car that has obviously depreciated quite compared to
Yeah,
your
and we also
Tesla.
got to actually think about though, the Model S is what,
100 grand.
70
Yeah.
something $1,000 to $100,000 depending on
Yeah.
your configuration. The Subaru Forester is no more than about $40,000 brand new.
That is true. And I do get that. But I could pick a more expensive car if I wanted to. And I feel like the depreciation would not be close to that, in my opinion. It just depends. I just think it's amazing how they're holding their value when a lot of people said they wouldn't. That was the other thing. You ever looked up how much the first Tesla is going for now?
The first one was a Roadster, right? Their very
I think
first
so. I'm gonna
Roadster.
I'm gonna bring it up. Okay.
I actually have
Um,
not looked at that.
I think it's so because of it's the very first Tesla in that regard. It has
Right.
literally gone up and yeah, between it, yeah, the first limited 100,000 or 1,000 customers is priced around 250,000 because it's gone up so much now. Like, but you got
Jeez.
people. It's because people want they think it's going to be worth something one. But just to go to
Oh,
show
it
you,
absolutely will be.
yeah, a lot of them are just over time. I really think we're going to see the value of them hold because the main reason you're going to want to buy those is for the autopilot, which you're going to have to hope you paid for or the person you're buying it from did pay for it. I think that's genius on Tesla. And it's where
Yep.
Apple does the same thing. You want to use some of their apps, you got to pay for that app, basically, like Procreate or I'm thinking of some Apple Music and all that stuff. Tesla's like, you want our autopilot? You buy it now, it won't be so much later. Right now, I think it's at 8 grand. It could be higher. I remember when it was 5 grand and I wanted to get a
Yep.
Tesla. And it just keeps going up because that's how they're making money. It's a one time thing, but I think they're going to turn it into subscriptions soon because that's their
Oh,
moneymaker
I
right
hope
there.
not.
Yeah, I know. I
So
hope not either, but that's their moneymaker.
that was that's my fear with everything being electronic and in the cloud and easily controllable or updated or any of that over the internet is anybody. You got to think about it. That's all a service. That
Mm,
car you bought is not a service. That's an item you bought.
true.
But easily they could add something to it. They'll be like, hey, if you want to use this, it costs us money to keep that service alive, so you have to pay us a monthly subscription.
Yeah.
And Tesla can do that right now. And people can bitch about it, but what are they going to do? Sell their car simply because they have to
Yep.
pay for a service for autopilot? No, I guarantee you a lot of people, probably the majority of the people, would pay that subscription fee.
Yeah.
And I can tell you personally, if I had a choice between um buying autopilot, let's say they jack up the price to buy it outright for a lifetime subscription, it's $15,000. It's $15,000. I already spent, let's say I bought a Model X and I already spent $80,000 on a Model X, and I now need to spend 15 extra thousand dollars just to have autopilot, or I can spend $100 a year. I would absolutely do $100 a year.
Yeah.
I
It would.
guarantee you it's not going to be that cheap. It's probably going to be more like $100 a month, but
Yeah, it will. It's still worth it. Like I bet they did that. Uma Warrior said, "I don't trust autopilot." I do. Buy the Cybertruck. We were talking about that yesterday. Have you guys seen what the Cybertruck looks like? I'm gonna bring that up because I don't think a lot of people realize that me and Meat and Beans are both like not exactly pretty, in my
it
opinion. Looks.
looks like the freaking warthog from Halo.
I mean,
It is weird.
it definitely looked futuristic. Everything we've always talked about in terms of what it's gonna look like. Do like this though. This looks nice in terms of like when you want to do the final like home. Get up right there. That's going to be pretty cool if you have like a tiny home and that's how you travel. But at the end of the day, I still don't know if they're going to be able to do that based on the battery. Now that battery going into the Roadster, that's a long battery, 620 miles. If they can put that in here, and then you're getting 310 miles in terms of pulling something heavy. That's the thing we were talking about that yesterday. This they said it has the pulling power to pull stuff, but I just don't think it's really going to be able to last long for people who really are in for you example in Arizona or me in Tennessee. You know, the nearest place is in Nashville, and then there's some in Clarksville. But if I wanted to go farther with it, I have to make so many multiple trips. Where it'd make
Yep.
more sense to have like a I don't know a diesel truck versus But I'm really really interested in what they're going to do with the semi because if they figure out how to do the semis, they're going to game change a lot of jobs immediately.
So let's think about this. 20 years from now, let's say 90% of the vehicles on the road are all electric. It would make sense for the infrastructure, the road infrastructure to change along with it. And if they don't do this, I don't think it's going to work. And what I mean by that is a road right now is just asphalt. That's all it is. But if you change that road to where it has inductive charging, which we've had for years, you can charge your cell phone via induction. If you have inductive charging, as so long as you are on a main road, your vehicle is staying charged.
Yeah.
Or it can be completely powered by the grid, and then as soon as you go off road, then you're on your own battery. It that right there is where I can see these semi trucks being not only one autonomous, which I feel sorry for all the truck drivers that make tons of money driving truck.
Yeah.
I feel like eventually they are going to be autonomous and they're going to be out of jobs. But on top of that, they're endless, limitless. They can go all day, all night,
Yep.
nonstop, and never have to worry about anything.
Dude, the
Um,
inside looks amazing. I have it pulled up right now. Like, I want to drive it. The thing is, I will say this: they're gonna need some kind of driver in there because you're gonna have to hope that if the sys autopilot isn't working properly, maybe like I'm not saying I don't trust the computers, but you're gonna want someone in there for now. And sometimes when it comes to semis or to autopilot in general, it doesn't know how to go to certain areas. So like those windmills, you see those larger vehicles pulling the all the other areas where off the road kind of happens to get that part there, or
yep.
going down certain roads that they know they can't, but they know the trucker knows that they can go down that road. That's where I think you're still going to need them, but it's going to cut them down significantly. And
Oh, absolutely.
it would be great. Everyone's talking about the roads. Like we need to be able to fix the roads. And I feel like that's going to require like a kind of like how we created the highway or the interstate system. It's going to take use a whole country to get behind that instead of just relying on okay, hey, New York has their own road. The roads need to be like one kind of thing. I think to help get functional good roads. But in terms of like this Tesla here, this semi, I mean, The only problem I see is if that battery can really pull that. But the thing is, you could make the trailer have batteries as well. You know what I mean? I
Yep.
wonder if they'll do that, if that's part of their thing. Thank you for the follow there. But I think, like, in terms of,
So
go ahead, man.
think about this. What if each state on their major interstate highways had just a couple hundred miles of inductive charging?
That would be pretty
So
cool.
there's tons of superchargers here in the valley in Arizona. There's some on the border between Arizona and California, and there's obviously a ton in California. So as long as you can make it from Arizona to the border, I think there's actually one. So we talked about this, and I was actually wrong. There is one about halfway between Phoenix and the border of Arizona and California. It's super small. I think it's like four chargers at a gas station by a
Mm.
Burger King. But that road, that I-10 freeway, is a long, straight, barren road. So, and it's literally surrounded by nothing. There's absolutely nothing out there. No crops or anything. It's just land.
Yeah.
So put a bunch of, and it's also really windy. Put a bunch of windmills out there, a bunch of solar panel farms and stuff like that, and have about 200 miles of straight induction charging. You wouldn't have to stop at
That's
all
true.
in a Tesla. You can go straight from Phoenix to Arizona, no, or sorry, from Phoenix, Arizona to Southern California in one shot without having to charge, and you would still have a ton of battery left once you get there. So,
Because the road would
um,
be, why would that be possible? Because the roads are different, or
no, I'm saying you could do that pretty much anywhere. What I'm suggesting is that you do induction charging on long straight roads,
okay, yeah, yeah. I get what you're
in
saying now.
both
Yeah.
lanes. So while you're
Oh,
driving, it's also semi-charging your vehicle. Now, it's not going to charge it just like a supercharger because you're using energy while you're charging it, and that
yeah.
also generates a ton of heat. So there's other problems they would have to come around and solve with that. But just the ability that you can have your vehicle charge every once in a while you're driving, you're not stopping, you're not losing time, and you can go a whole lot farther.
For
And there
semis,
are
that would be
tons
amazing.
of highways in the United States that are just barren and just straight,
Someone
just
just asked,
absolutely
what
barren and
about if
straight.
there's no sun? Interstate 40 and Interstate 10 literally have some of the most open skies I've ever seen. Once you get to Texas, kind of in that general
Yeah,
area, the Panhandle and all that, it literally is wide open skies. Like the only thing that would be a problem would be the wind damaging the solar panels or the turbine, or the wind picking up dust. So they would have to be clean, but we could easily figure out a system. Like the thing is like I heard this when Joe Rogan was talking to it's not Mike Tyson. It's the guy that always talks about physics, but I always get his name confused. It's the physics guy that everybody loves.
Bill
Anyways,
Nye.
no, not Bill Nye.
I
He's
know.
the science guy, man. No, it's the one that he's the quantum physics guy. Watch this. I'm gonna type in quantum physics and he's gonna come up. So he's talking to Joe, and Joe asked him, like, "Hey, will this ever like will we ever get to the point where we just have fully electric cars everywhere and everything?" And like yeah, I think so. And here's why. Any time in America's history we said, "Hey, we need to get together and get this done," we've done it. The interstate's a good example of it. Before that, we just had different roads, people had to communicate. We got the interstate idea from the Germans, but look at how well that's worked for us. That's how we get across this country. That's humongous. Oh, thank you for the follow there. And it's yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's why I keep getting it confused. Yeah, Neil, you know what I'm talking about? Do you know him?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. The
yeah,
astrophysicist.
and he yeah, the astrophysicist. That's what it was, not quantum physics. Yeah. So he was constantly like, it's only a matter of time. He's like, look at the education system. Now, granted, both of the education system and these roads are poorly managed, but that's a different topic and a different story when it comes to
Absolutely.
if they would have been properly managed, the point and the obvious, like, taking care of them would be completely different. That being said, anytime America has been like, hey, we need to do this for the betterment of our country, we have pretty much done that. While it may have taken time, we have done it. And I feel like that's what's going to happen. I think exactly what you're talking about. Everyone's like, well, the economy is really doing poorly. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure we did the interstate idea shortly after World War II, if I remember correctly. Let me look it up real quick. I think I'm
I
right.
think Interstate 10 from California to Arizona was after World War II.
Yeah. but I think it was Harry Truman who did it. No, Dwight Eisenhower, The Birth of the Interstate and Highway. And it was after
Yep.
his experience in World War II where he observed that they had different stuff, like different highway systems and everything. So, like, after World War II,
1956.
yep. So we,
1956 was the I-10, and it completed in 1990. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's perfect. Like, that's my point. Like, we're going to figure out something. So when there's no sun, when the economy was just, we kind of just came out of World War II. You know, we're still trying to figure out where we were as a country, how much we were going to keep going. But like, I have to realize we want to do something for the country. We will. We'll figure out what's best, and I feel like that's where we're going right now. And not to piggyback on fossil fuels being a big problem or anything like that, but to kind of point out, to be honest with you, it's really the international seas that bother me, where a lot of emissions are coming from these huge cruise lines and the uh, shipping container. They're moving them across. There's no emissions out because they're going across international waters. You know what I mean? Like you
Yep.
can't really like, hey, we don't allow that here in America. Well, we're in the ocean, man. This ain't America. So little things like that, where I think we're going to start slowly seeing our footprint get smaller and smaller as us with cars. But once again, it's going to take time, and it's going to take all of us coming together. Like, when do you think we'll fully not have any more gas cars? Do you think that will ever happen in our lifetime?
No, it won't happen in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. You have a lot of obstacles to overcome with that, and just like you're saying, it's going to take time. You have farming equipment, you have industrial equipment, you
Yep.
have trade routes and trading equipment like semi trucks, and you have jets, you have planes, you have um, generators, you have all these things that have been out there and implemented and bought and paid for and maintained, and all this stuff, all this economical infrastructure that would need to adapt alongside. It's not going to happen in our lifetime, I don't think. Um, will it get really far? Absolutely. I think it's going to start with electric cars. Because really all that kind of, you've brought this up. I brought up the fact that it seemed like the oil industry was against it, and they were for quite a while. But then you brought up the point that, well, now they're kind of for it, because probably because they figured out a way to get their hand in the pot or whatever the case may be. But
Yep.
they're
Tell
for
them.
it because now that they're for it, and the next thing is now we just need to get the auto manufacturers in for it, and they're following suit. Because Chevy came out with their electric vehicle, Toyota's come out with their electric vehicles, and Nissan's come out with one. They've been doing that since the 90s, and they've always fallen short because they don't sell. They
Well, they
don't
also
sell that
never
much,
created the
and you get a bunch of.
infrastructure. Like, if you look at
Exactly.
Tesla, they're like, okay, here's the problem. We need more charging points everywhere. And they've been doing that where with the other cars that we're talking about, you got to charge it at home. Like, I don't,
Yep.
can you, and I've seen a couple that aren't Tesla chargers where you can charge it as well. But there's something about like, and this is coming from my job. I will stay at a lot of hotels that have those chargers, the Tesla one. It's unreal how, and it's at Hilton properties. I've noticed most of them how they figured out how to do that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you are 100% right about we're not going to replace those, not for a while. The larger stuff and making stuff, we're still going to require some kind of oil. If you think your kid, or you think it'll be our grandkids that finally are like, oh, you drove that? How did that work? What kind of electric motor did it have? You know what I mean?
I absolutely think that my grandkid would probably come over and see the old dusty car in the garage, just kind of like, we probably had experiences like that in the past. It's under a bunch of junk, under a bunch of covers, and it's a mystery to them because they don't know what it is. All they know is what we kind of view as public transportation now. They get in a vehicle, it takes them where they need to go, and they don't have to worry about anything. They just get in and they do their business.
Yeah, how
So
crazy is
it
that?
would, I definitely imagine that talking point and be like, you don't know what it was like? You know how your parents were like, you don't know what it was like driving on a road trip with four kids just chilling in the back of the station wagon. There weren't car seats, there weren't seat belts back there, and all that other type of stuff. It's
Yeah.
going to be a conversation like that. Do you not? You don't know what a car actually sounds like, and
what's crazy is I think eventually we're gonna get to the point to where these cars are driving themselves to the point where they pick the kids up from school. Kinda like a
Yeah.
taxi system where, like, instead of
Yep.
me, like, using, like, "Hey, my car" kinda like Uber and Lyft, I'd be like, "Hey, I need someone to pick up little John today at school," right? And he'll go there, his phone will line up with that car, he gets in that correct car, it lets me know he's in the car, and then it drops him off from school. Now, I'm granted, I know a lot of you are gonna be like, "Well, just take the bus." What I'm trying to say is I think eventually we're gonna be like, they're not gonna it's gonna get to the point one day in the future, you don't need someone driving there. Your computer has to be updated to the latest system. It will be connected via Wi-Fi or some kind of satellite, and it will drive on its
Starlink.
own. And I think that it's not gonna happen like you said in our lifetime, but I can see our grandkids being like, "So wait a minute, someone drove you to school?" Like, I can see that happening, and it's so
Yeah.
crazy that we're not too far from that future. We are, but we're not, you know?
Just like my parents would talk about how, the classic I walked to and from school uphill both ways in the
Yep,
snow, in the rain, the freezing cold, and blah 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 blah. You don't know how good you have it. It's going to be that exact same conversation that
yep.
every generation ends up having because of how quick technology is improving.
And how much it's
Um,
changed.
yeah, that's what I was trying to. That point I was trying to get across is things were kind of slow before about 1980, and I don't mean just with technology. I mean just in general development. Things were kind of slow. People were content with being where they were, and of course there was World War One, and then there was World War Two. Those were setbacks, to say the least,
Yeah,
of development in general of the world. But as soon as 1980 hit around and the internet started up and computers started to be more accessible, I mean, we're talking like 1 year you couldn't afford a computer, and the next year you could. 1 year it wasn't a household thing that people knew about, and the next year it was. And you're talking the gaming video game systems that went insane. I remember you had the NES, and then a couple years later was the SNES, and a couple years later it was the Nintendo 64, and they were
yeah.
each extreme leaps in improvement. And then you got stuff like now where we are kind of plateauing a little bit in certain areas. And to kind of go a little off topic on gaming, we're kind of plateauing a little bit with video games. Like it was what, 8 years from the PS4 to PS5 or something like that,
Well, their
whereas
reasoning
before it was only a couple years.
yeah, but their reasoning behind that was because it I really think they could have I'll say this, with PCs, how often can you upgrade? You know what I mean? How often could you make your PC better?
So I can upgrade just about every single year, but the thing is I don't need to.
Well, I get that. Well, that's the thing. You know how you said that? That's where I think they were going with why they didn't wanna do the new PlayStation, the new Xbox, simply because there's only so much they can do. They can put in that new graphics card and they can put in all that new stuff, but it's not really they didn't wanna do something and have us say, "Well, it's the same as the old one." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think go ahead.
It's the software development
Yep.
requirements not really needing that extra horsepower. That's really what drives it. And that's also, and I brought that point up to talk about the electric vehicles and other things that are electronic and controlled by software, is you're going to get that plateau at some point where the software simply just is not complex enough to require that extra hardware. So you're going to get something like a Model 3, for example, let's say 5 years from now, that sure, it's going to have some software updates, but that car is no better than the Model 3 5 years after that. It's the
Yeah,
same hardware, same everything, maybe some design changes and whatnot, but you could do everything that car can do.
exactly.
That's where I'm getting at. The only exception to that is I think batteries. The battery technology is extremely far behind, and it's going to be something that is going to speed up really fast and start becoming a thing where I would guess every model year that comes out of an electric vehicle is going to have a newer battery technology. And they're probably
Yes.
going to come out with a program to where you can retrofit your old car with the new technology.
Yes.
Um, that's the only thing that's lacking behind. But other than that, yeah, the software side of it, it's okay. Can this hardware run the infrastructure? That's it. It can. Can I do what I want to do with this feature on this infrastructure? I can. Okay, then I don't need to design a new infrastructure and new hardware or none of that. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And from a business standpoint, that provides a lot of value to people's to the things that people buy. So you imagine you buy an iPhone, and sure, there's a new one that comes out every year or whatever, but your iPhone does the exact same thing as that other iPhone, has all the same features. It's not slower. It lasts just as long and everything. Why would you go buy a new iPhone? Some
Yeah,
people will simply because they want the newest, greatest thing. I'm kind of
exactly.
like that, but
Yeah.
other than that, you wouldn't.
I I kind of want to point this out. Elon is kind of designing that on purpose. He's wanting you to have a car that you really don't upgrade it. You might even have to change the battery, but that's it. Like he
Yep.
really wants that to happen because he's all about cost, like being cost effective. Like this guy has millions and trillions of dollars, okay? I mean, I'm sure he doesn't have that much, but get my point. He doesn't care about making more money. He is actually one of those guys that just wants the future. You know what I mean? Like he's going to be
He.
written in our history books, in my opinion, based on what he
Oh
wants to
yeah.
accomplish and everything he's touching, from the medical field to the car field to going into space. He's doing what we see happen in TV shows, where the guy is like,
Yep.
"Nah, I'm putting everything to this. I don't want to be on just this earth. If I am on this earth, this is what I'm going to do." But going back to, like, I think he's going to make those prices the way they are. Like, you're going to see the price of the electric vehicle, the normal one, or the economical one for us people who don't want to buy the 100 grand roadster. You're going to see it start going down, down, and more because of what you just said. Is not going to keep moving. Like, there's only so much you can do. So those cars that you're going to want from him, where he's going to try to make his money, is off the autopilot. He's going to keep
Yep.
raising that up and raising that up. And then eventually you're buying a simplistic car. What you're paying for is the autopilot. That's where I can see him having a car that's 15 grand, but the autopilot is 10 grand or even 15 grand. I can see it going up to that simply because that's where they're making their money. But that's his goal. His goal isn't to make you a car. Like, you can buy any car you want. Your goal is to have an autopilot so you don't have to like do anything. Like that's the biggest thing. And the battery, I really like. I'm hoping the battery cost so far. What we've been reading and what I've seen is between 3,000 to 7,000 to replace the battery. Now you're going to see one article because it popped up, 16 grand to replace everything. And we both read it, or I read it to Meet and Bean. Literally, he hit a rock and it shattered all of it. So if you're going to shatter everything in that battery, you're going to have to replace a lot of things. But if the average battery is between 3,000 to 7,000, which I know a lot of people are like, Eric, I don't have that money. You're driving a car. If that transmission goes out, how much does that mean, Bean?
So in my 2000 Durango, which is super old school technology, it was nearly $4,000. It
Ooh,
was 3,500 just for the transmission,
ooh.
and I was getting an extremely good deal on labor. So I was going to be somewhere around 38, $3,900, where a normal person would have been somewhere around $4,500 for that specific vehicle.
Yeah. And that's just that he did get a good
Yeah,
deal
to get it,
because
man, exactly. 3 to 6K for a transmission, and it always depends on the vehicle. Four-wheel drives are more, all-wheel drives are more. If it's a CVT, that's usually more. Yeah,
everyone's talking about how he's going to hit $1 trillion. I don't think he ever will because you guys don't realize how big a trillion is.
yeah.
You have to realize, yeah,
Trillion is 999 billion.
yeah, like getting to 1 billion is fucking ridiculous, let alone a trillion. At that point, I don't see him getting to there. He could. I'm not saying it's not possible. There's like a 1% chance in my opinion, but I don't think so.
So
But
if it,
yeah,
if that is true, where he is currently worth 150 billion across all of his assets, and there's a difference between what is it net worth, and
yep.
there's the other term. Do you know what
Um,
I'm talking about?
Basically, his net worth is an accumulation of what he has, but it's not exactly his actual worth, right?
Yeah,
Net
there's that other
worth,
terminology for what he is actually
liquid
worth,
net worth or gross worth.
something like that. But
Yeah.
if
What we're
if
trying to,
his net worth is 150 billion right now, if he does what he's wanting to do with SpaceX and commercializes space travel, and you actually have a need and a want to go to Mars, for example, or the moon or whatever, to visit and take vacation, that's a thing. I can see that 150 billion jacking way the heck up super
Yeah,
fast simply
one at
because of that, especially with
156.9,
Starlink.
but he's 20
That
million.
net worth, that's insane.
Yeah. So, but that's because of Tesla going up so much and how much of Tesla he now Tesla has been
Yep.
taking a hit lately. That's another topic for stocks and what that will be going back up soon on March 12th and March 19th. Totally different, unrelated thing. But I just don't see him hitting 1 billion's unreal. A trillion is just unfathomable. If he hits that, even if he does do all that, at that point, man, like I hope he sells some of it and it just becomes his, you know what I mean, like his worth. Like that's how
Right.
much he owned, and he can just do whatever he wants. I mean, if he revolutionized space travel, revolutionizes the car industry, like you guys don't understand the medical thing that he wants to do. He is talking about, and a lot of people are gonna get religious here, and I'm sorry, please don't. I believe what you want. He's gonna make a chip that basically goes into your brain or connects to your brain to rebuild nerves that are completely gone. Like, for example, I'm deaf in my left ear. He could rebuild that nerve with this wire that goes in there or this chip that would click in because all the brain is a nervous system of wires going everywhere. And there's somewhere where that's burned out. The same thing with anxiety and depression and all of that. If he makes a chip that's good enough to do that, because that's what he's talking about, what he's trying to do is rewire, give people the ability to move their limbs again, stuff like that. If he does that, I could see all of that hitting him to a trillion, but I don't think that's going to happen for at least another 20 years. But you know how you're talking about technology plateauing? It
Yep.
usually doesn't. Thank you for the follow there. It usually just exponentially keeps growing because technology has been doing that, like you said, since the 80s. If you look at the 80s, let me see if I can find it and go from
Yeah,
there.
I want to clarify my point on that is
Yeah,
I mostly meant parts of technology plateaus.
true,
Like
true.
software will plateau where hardware is kind of being left behind or put on the shelves waiting for software to catch up kind of thing. The battery will the car will be waiting for the battery to catch up kind of thing.
True, true, true. I can't find a good graph. That's something I should have had beforehand. But if you ever get to see this graph, like he's talking about, once we get to like 1980, it goes up a little bit, and then the 90s hit, and then from like 99, this graph
Goes to
is
the
like
moon.
it's unreal. It's like, and you can see how it has changed. Like we didn't have phones that were able to take photos. We didn't have
Yep.
phones that could record stuff. No one had, there's so many drones
You
and stuff like that. It's unreal.
you
Thank
had
you.
digital media. That was a huge one right there. Everything was on tapes and it was not digital. Tapes are not digital whatsoever. And
Mm,
then all of a sudden you had CDs.
yep.
I remember 5.5 floppy Bs. That's a tape. Um, 3.5 floppies, and then the zip drives were also tapes. They were just beefier versions of floppies. And then all of a sudden, boom, CDs.
Yeah.
750 megabytes on a disc, and it's digital. And then all of a sudden, hard drives, which were you know platters that held digital information, turned into solid state drives. They turned
Yeah.
into memory chips that can remember what was put on them without power. And all of a sudden, because that happened, instead of you having a disc that is, I don't know, what is the size of a CD, like 6 inches in diameter or something like that. Instead of having
Yeah.
like a 6 inch diameter disc you have to carry around everywhere, or a bunch of them, you now have something that is a quarter of an inch squared that can go into just about anything and hold 10 times as much as a disc. That right there, as soon as that happened, it just went to the moon.
Well, I
And that
remember.
allowed cell phones,
Yep.
cameras,
Yep.
and
I was
all
gonna.
those things that needed storage now
Yep.
could be smaller and tighter, and they can focus on other things like your processing power and battery power of your cell phone, and putting cameras in there and headphone jacks and motors and sensors and all this stuff that didn't have to take up a bunch of or that had a bunch of room to take up, now that it didn't have to have a freaking hard drive in it. If you Perfect example is an iPod. If you
Yep.
remember the
Yep.
first iPod had an actual spinning hard drive in it, and
Yep.
that was the majority of the device. As soon as went to solid state, that iPod went from this big brick thing to this tiny little slim wafer. and it just went tinier and tinier and tinier because they didn't need a giant actual hard drive in it. It had a laptop hard drive in it. So
Well, it's just like
it's
cameras. I remember when I was a kid and I'm at uh, a theme park and I ran out of memory, and it's because I had a 256 megabyte memory card. You had to buy multiple memory cards to take more photos on digital
yep,
cameras back in '04,
yep,
2004. And now on my camera, I can take 1,000 photos, and on my phone, I can record in 4K. Like, it's technology is going to keep growing, but he is right about how the car and the battery, there will be a difference at where they are, but it's only because I think eventually, this is just my opinion. I hope someone sees this one day in the future and they're like, this guy was right. Lost Drifter in the history book said this. I think if we can perfect autopilot, we will have flying cars. And here's
yes,
why. Because I don't want you flying. I don't. I don't care if your car does it and the computer does everything, because most of the time when pilots are flying, they have the computer there to help them in most senses. You know what I mean? So if we have a perfect autopilot, flying is going to become pretty easy. And I feel like if the battery keeps getting to where it's going, you're going to see that happen. Because the biggest thing about having that autopilot perfected, thank you, is you're going to be able to trust it. You won't have wrecks on the highways anymore. You'll have a streamline of cars knowing how to merge because you're not merging now, you're autopiloted. The same thing with, I think that's what's going to happen. Like, it's going to get to that point. Thoughts?
yeah. Yeah, and so this is a point that I wanted to bring up before we got to end here is something that a lot of people are going to get scared about. And I believe it also had to do with, actually, this is fact. It's history. A lot of people are afraid of their computers being compromised, their cell phones being
Yeah.
compromised, hackers and stuff like that. Um, the the fear is almost 100% not needed. There were companies that formed in the early computer age
Hmm.
that literally mongered people, basically told people that, hey, there's this problem out here. You need to be protected, and I have a solution for you. It's one of
Yeah.
those things where the problem didn't exist. They had a product. So they created the market for the product. And that market was people being afraid of their computers being compromised and stuff like that.
Yep.
The if anybody actually tries to hack anything, it is not easy. It is
Yeah.
extremely hard, and it was extremely hard back then too. The What made most quote unquote hacks easy is human error.
Hmm.
You have an account and you made your password your first and last name together. You had an account with no password.
Yep.
You just picture this. You move into the ghettoest neighborhood ever and you unbolted your door and you stored it in the backyard and you had no front door. That's basically what people were doing. So it
Yep.
just allowed people that wanted to walk in. That, in my opinion, is that's not hacking. Nobody broke any type of security or anything like that. It was just somebody malicious walked in and did their thing. So when I know people are going to bring up this argument is like, well, I don't want a car that is completely controlled by a computer, out of my control, and all this other. Because what if somebody wanted to get at me and they hacked my car and drove it off of a cliff? This has been in TV shows and movies
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yep.
It is so simple to stop anybody from having access to your electronic devices. So simple. And a lot of companies are actually taking the control out of your hands because people don't get the idea that you need to have a really strong password and you need
Yep.
to have your online presence needs to be essentially another life. It needs to be completely different from your life. Don't make passwords anything relatable to you as a person or anything like that. Don't stay logged into your bank account. Don't do any of that stuff. So, your electric car, I can guarantee you, is you're not going to have that much control over it whatsoever. It
Yeah.
might be tied to an account, but the drivability of that car will be completely controlled by the company that manages it. And you're going to pay them to do that because that's going to give you that security that nobody's going to hack your car and ram it into another car or drive it off a cliff, or if it's a flying car, fly it straight into the ground while you're in it.
or
That's just
into the
not going to
building.
happen.
Everyone's gonna be like a terrorist attack. But kind of going back to that, when
Yeah.
you're saying that, people are worried about that chip, and I'm like, that chip is not gonna be what people are worried about. Like people are not gonna unless they're gonna make sure it's safe to where no one could hack into it. But I don't see that happening. But someone brought up, do you think Limitless how he takes the pill, or do they think it's gonna be a microchip? It's gonna be a microchip because you got nerve ending. They're electrical. All we have to do is figure out what electrical areas are not working. But at the same time, like I don't think you're going to have to worry about electrical car or anything like technology wise getting hacked. If we have some kind of password on there, it will be something complicated. It would probably be like the password on the back of your Wi-Fi. You guys hate that password, but you know why it's there because they know people would not make a password, or they would make a password that was just easy to copy or figure out. I've been
So
doing that now
so
lately
think of
for
this.
all of my stuff because I don't want anybody to do that. Like I have to pick something that you guys would never know. You know?
Yeah. So think of this. That password on the back of your Wi-Fi. A lot of people think that's to protect the modem.
Hmm.
That that is your Wi-Fi password to access the network. That is simply there to protect the other devices on your network that are 99% of the time not secured. You have your phone. You have a lot of people have phones with no passwords on them. You have your computers that people don't know what the settings do, so they just say, "Yeah, discover everything on this network and allow everything to talk to me and do whatever they want. I don't care. It's my home." But somebody could be walking down the street and say, "Oh, there's a Wi-Fi that's unprotected. It's completely open. I'm going to
Yep.
connect to it. Oh, there's a computer sitting here. Okay, well, I'm just going to try to RDP in this computer. They don't have a password into it. Oh my God, I
Yep.
can now see and
Done.
control this whole computer."
Yep.
So the Wi-Fi modems and routers come out with a default extremely hard password, and it's different for every single one simply for that reason because people don't know how to protect their own devices.
Yeah. Well, it's the
Um,
same thing, like he
what?
said. Like this is our generation of don't leave the keys in your car. Don't leave your
Yep,
doors unlocked. This
exactly.
is our generation of it. The only difference is there are more steps. You got to make a good code and you got to make a good password in terms of that. So
So someone brought up the concern with a vehicle like that is the malfunction and you not able to mechanically control the car in case it malfunctions.
yeah.
I have some few points about that. We're not. I absolutely do not think 2 years from now everything will just be completely automated and controlled by computers, and you'll have zero control over it. That I not going to happen. Even autopilot now to this day, granted it's still in beta or whatever, but it still requires you to put your hands on the steering wheel every once in a while. It requires you to be present and able to take over at any given moment because yes, malfunctions do happen. And that is something that's probably going to prolong the development of this more than most people think. You have a lot of problems when it comes to computers. You have overheating, you have electrical interference, magnetic interference, um, shorts, parts
The
just
other
simply going
reason
bad because it's just a bad batch, stuff like that.
the other reason you have to be touching that wheel is because legally, when you're behind a car, where does your hands have to
Yep,
be? Behind
on
the
the wheel
wheel.
tended to.
And it's the same thing with this. You still have to. You're not until we get to that point. It might be a while. But then someone brought this up. People won't take the vaccine. What makes you think they'll take a chip? You know what will happen? And it's really, really simple, guys. You're going to see the rich people do it. You're going to see the people who medically they're desperate. They need that chip to work. And you're going to see over time the COVID vaccine has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's going to take time. That microchip is going to have to go through different phases until they're approved and whatnot. Where the COVID vaccine is a totally different scenario, a pandemic and everything. Where this microchip, I guarantee you what's going to happen, and it's just my opinion, you're going to have basketball, maybe football players, maybe I'll take that back, not football, maybe baseball, basketball players that really don't have too much contact or non-contact golfers that will get that chip and it will enhance how they play. Their performance will be unreal because they're using a microchip. And we'll have to go back to, is that legal or not? Like, remember when steroids were just rampant and people just got away with it for a while until they were like, nah, if you test for this, we can't have you play. I think that's what's going to happen to them. Hey, Mr. Wildman, but think about that. You know what I mean?
So, um, a lot of people, and I just looked this up just to confirm, a lot of people think that we only use 10% of our brain,
Well, that's not true.
and that's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
So think of the brain as simply the brain is a neural network. It is actually kind of what Elon is actually
Hmm.
developing. That's all it is. It's a network of neurons that are basically electrical pathways,
Yep.
and they fire at different rates and at different times to accomplish different things. It's no different actually than a computer processor, except for it's far more complex. Um, what Elon is attempting to do is to not actually replace your brain or anything like that, but to enhance it,
Exactly.
um, and also repair. So um, your brain, like you were stating, your brain could burn out neurons, and you can have nothing physically wrong with your right eye, for example, literally perfect condition, but you can't see out of it because your brain does not receive its inputs anymore.
Yep.
So what would Elon do is he would implant the Neuralink. The Neuralink would surgically attach wires to your eye and then to the other side of that burnt out part in your brain and basically bypass the broken piece. Bam, you
Yeah.
have eyesight now. And for people that maybe have somewhat hearing loss like you do, and I actually do too, a little bit, you can bypass the bad parts and put in electronic um wires and sensors and stuff like that to basically replace it and fix. Now, enhancement is, imagine this, and a lot of people think Elon has already done this to himself. If you
Yes.
actually,
I wanted to
Joe
say that.
Rogan,
I'm so glad you
yeah,
said that. Yes.
if you watch his interviews from a couple years ago and then watch his interviews now, there's a lot of times where he kind of looks away and his eyes start moving like he's processing something internally that's being fed to him. So an enhancement would be something like you get the Neuralink. You're in perfect health. It needs to do nothing to fix you, so to speak.
Mhm.
But you want an enhancement, you can have the internet in your head at all times.
And
I can sit here and watch YouTube videos and nobody would know what I was doing, but I physically see it because Neuralink is projecting it to my brain as if I am seeing it. It is an alternate reality kind of situation. You want instant access to any information, you can just think about it. You want to
yeah.
control things with your mind, you can now do that with Neuralink because Neuralink can connect to whatever you want to control. You want to turn on your TV, Neuralink, the second you walked in within range, it already connected to your TV. All you had to do was think, turn on TV, and boom, it turns on. So that's the kind of enhancements that he's looking to do. And the enhancements in the sense of fixing problems that have arisen. Um, there's a lot of other things about that too, like prolonged life. A lot of people die or suffer from like Alzheimer's and other degenerative things about with their body over the years of just natural aging, and Neuralink could help fix that. It can even go as far as being advanced enough to help your cells regenerate and renew, and you essentially it's anti-aging at that point.
That's what I think is
So
eventually, that's a scary thing. That's a different topic for a different day. But I think that's where we're heading in
when you
technology.
cease to be you.
Yep. Yeah, that's basically it. Or when you don't age anymore, or do we become a program? Do we upload ourselves
So
to things? You know?
every 7 years, I think it is, every cell in your body is different.
Yep.
So a lot of people don't realize that is what makes you is your DNA actually, and physically what makes you. What makes you spiritually or mentally is your personality, your experience, your life experiences. None of that stuff's gonna change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
DNA modification, I'm sure, will be a thing to fix certain issues. Genetic defects definitely going to be a thing, but
Yep.
if I have the neural implant and that neural implant um fixes my cells to where they continue to regenerate in a healthy manner even when I'm 100 years old and I don't look 100 anymore, I can tell you personally, I'm not going to feel any different. I'm not going to feel like I'm not myself or anything like that because I'm still myself. I'm going to still look the same way. I'm going to still
Yeah.
act the same way and think the same way and all that other type of stuff.
You ever seen the movie Gattaca?
I don't think so.
I'm gonna type it up. This is your movie to watch. All of you watch this movie. it was at one point NASA said this is what the future is most accurate. And I've watched that movie constantly. And I'm going to go, yeah, I have seen that interview with Joe. I've watched all of them. That movie right there, they before a kid is born, they were able to manipulate the gene to where create beings without dependency on alcohol or violent tendency. They would get rid of that,
Yep.
but they could die. Yeah, they could literally tell who was natural born and who was created based on these genetics. And I think that's the next step before we get to the microchip and all that stuff. But like Gattaca is just, you get a chance, watch that movie. It has Ethan Hawke in it. It's a great movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. And it's just like, oh yeah, someone like before all that happens, they're like, I guarantee you, Elon or some super scientist will basically it will go to the military before public use. It usually is how a lot of things happen. You'll see the military get it before the public does in terms of like treatments and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see. Like this topic was literally about electric cars, but I think we need to have a day where we talk about Elon at this rate. Like man,
That's true. Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean, you're talking about he did PayPal, he's doing Starlink, Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company. Um, just he's got his hand in so many pots and in so many industries, and he is killing it in all of them.
the thing is like this is gonna sound stupid. He's either a robot or an alien at this point, or he is one of those people. Have you seen Goodwill Hunting? Have you seen that movie?
Yes, yeah,
So in that movie, the
he's
guy
that
that
kid.
well, no, not the kid. So the teacher who's trying to get Will to become, hey, use your talent. He tells that story about this guy in the middle of nowhere creating formulas that he should not have been creating, and they went on to create formulas that changed the world, math formulas we still use today. But this guy was in the middle of nowhere, and
Yep.
what was in his brain? What did he eat? How did he get this? Like, how is this even possible? And I think that's with Elon. He's either like right there where he's got way too much in his head. Like when Elon or when he's talking to Joe, Joe's like, "How do you sleep?" And he's like, "I sleep," but he's like, "Is your brain constantly going?" And he had no hesitation. He's like, "Yeah, like it's always going, always." And you think about it, that's probably the best thing for him because he has to keep thinking the way he is to keep doing whatever it is he wants to do. He cannot. I don't ever think I've seen this guy have fun for a long time. Like if this was us, if we were him, we would literally after like that interview probably do everything we could with Joe Rogan. But I bet he had to go back to the plant. I bet he had to go to Texas. I bet he had to go to Germany. And I bet he's like constantly and he's always done this. He's always pushed himself so hard to accomplish the impossible. From PayPal to Tesla to everything. And I just still sit here and think, is this guy truly, truly human? Is he like one of the most unique individuals? Or is he an alien or is he a robot? And I know a lot of people in the chat were like, no, he's not a robot. I don't know. I really don't
So
anymore.
he may be now. He may be now with Neuralink, but
Oh yeah. He's
I uh,
go ahead.
every generation has somebody like Elon. I
True.
mean, we've had um we had Einstein and we had Tesla and we had all these people throughout generations that seemed to I don't want to use the word normal, but to people that weren't on their level seemed eerie.
They
Like
transcend
it got to be
what would be
yeah.
normal for us. They just transcend it. And
Yeah.
that's yeah, like
And
oof.
the thing is with Elon, so I feel like Elon had something that it's got to be down to something that most of us didn't have, either while growing up or a pivotal point in his life. Because I feel like I can do a lot of what Elon is doing myself
Mm,
if I dedicated myself to it. Um, but I can tell you right now, I wouldn't be happy. I would burn out super easy. I'd probably turn into a gigantic asshole.
yep.
Um, he can't. He doesn't. He somehow is able to do it without doing that stuff and dedicate all of his time and all of his brain power and
And
resources
resources.
and just get this shit done and take the blows and keep moving on and all this other stuff. Sure, I can do that. I can throw everything I have away now and start something up, fail, start again, fail, finally find something that works and make it. But my first thought is great. I have billions of dollars. I I could choose to do whatever I want. Now I'm addicted to success and I'm
Yes.
going to keep going. And I'm not going to make time for family. I'm not going to make time for myself. So when I'm 80 years old and I look back on my life, all I'm going to be able to say is, you guys are welcome.
That's what he
I
wants to
did
do.
nothing for myself. I threw my life away, but you guys can have a better life.
I feel like that's his whole goal because he does have a family now. He has done a little bit of that, but his overall goal is to do that once. Like, yeah, he created a school for his own kids and others to broaden the way they think instead of being repetitive learning situations. Yeah, like Elon, like, you can hate the guy, you can love the guy, but he's not doing what most of us would be doing. And as much as we say we think we could do it, I don't think we could. I don't think it's humanly possible for us to do what it is he does. As much as we
No,
think we could, you know what I mean?
I could tell you right now, I would break. I would break at some point. I absolutely would. I could
And
get close or not. I don't know. I
yeah,
can tell you right now, I don't want to do it, and I won't do it because I know I will snap. I will break. Something bad will happen. I'll throw
yeah.
my life away or something like that.
Well, you know something. There
I
was one
enjoy life
thing.
too much.
Yeah, that too. Well, there was one moment where I realized he was a human, and it was in this interview where they asked him how much did it hurt when your heroes told you that you were stupid, that you shouldn't be doing what you were doing. And he starts to cry, like legit cry. And he was like, I think I know what Elon is. He's a young kid. No matter how old he is, he's that young, ambitious kid who had idols and wanted to surpass them. And his idols were at the top. Like, do you guys understand that? Like, here I'm like, hey, I want to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, that's one of my idols, or the Rock, or um, any famous actor that I really can't think of off the top of my head right now. Those were like my idols and a football player. But his idols were people who touched the moon, were people who revolutionized technology, people who like we wouldn't have made them our idols. We would have been like, that's too hard for us. That's impossible. And he said, no, I want to be them, if not surpass them even more. And when his idols did not recognize him, he was hurt. And we gotta make a whole podcast about Elon one day, man. Because like just remembering all his different interviews and watching him climb and watching him grow, and the hate and the doubters and the all that stuff. But like
Yeah,
he's
he
never.
has the biggest fu energy. I'm going to do what I want out
Yes,
of any public figure I've ever seen.
one hundred
And
percent.
to 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 get a little deep here personally, um I have always had a knack for technology since I was probably 7 or even maybe a little bit earlier, and my grandpa got me into it, and I don't know if he was the reason. I don't know if, because I was too young, I don't know if he gave it to me or if he saw the potential and just kind of played that
Hmm.
hand because he saw it. But when it came to people like my dad, and I would try to tell my dad, like, hey, you got to do it this way, he a lot of times would be like, what do you know, you're only 10, what do you know, you're only 14. And
Yep.
he would kind of put me down like that, and a lot of people deal with that, whether it be something that they're far ahead in or something that they're on track in or whatever, whether it's from a family member, an idol, or a peer. And a lot of people deal with that, and it discourages them enough to where they stop developing. With me, it was a constant battle to where, you know what, no, I'm going to continue doing that. I know what I'm talking about. I like what I'm talking about. I like doing it. I'm going to continue doing it no matter what
Hmm.
anybody says, including my father. And it got me to the point today where, I can develop, I can write code, I can build computers, I can even solder and build circuit boards if I wanted to. I don't know everything, but I have the capacity and the understanding to where if I wanted to do something and I set my mind to it, I could gather the information and do it. um, and I feel like Elon had a lot of that, including with his idols and probably his peers too. And he had the biggest FU energy, and he just said, screw you, I'm going to do it anyways. Who are you to tell me I can't do this, or I don't know what I'm talking about? And that's why he is where he is today. And that's why he can um, do what he is doing and dedicate his life to doing this stuff and not break.
I mean, honestly, every time something, the thing is, it's like every time we think, okay, he'll tell you when it was like we were this close to giving up, and he'll tell you for everything that was like that, he kept going. I bet that one time, we're done, we're screwed, it's over. The breakthrough happened. That's what drives him, I think. He
Yeah,
knows it can be
exactly.
done. He just got to keep finding the answer. But on that note, before we go any farther, because we've been on here for an hour and 30 minutes, we have these podcasts on YouTube. We're going to have them on Anchor, which we'll share to all the platforms. I'm going to talk to you after that so we can make sure we're doing that properly. And then on top of that, hey, Gaming Frenzy, how's it going? Today was just about electrical cars, and we started getting deep into Elon. We need to have a whole podcast about that. And we need to do a part two about RV and kind of go over stuff like that again. A lot of people like that podcast. But I'm just if you're going to be here with us, you're just going to hear us kind of talk about stuff, and hopefully we'll try to stay on topic. But we'll probably be like Joe Rogan, where we just keep going and picking whatever we want to talk tonight. You know what I mean? Or afternoon. So usually on
I feel
Saturday,
like letting it naturally go
yeah,
is the best way
I think
because
so. Because like
it,
maybe we'll just say this is what we're going to start with, and then we'll go from there if we even start with
yeah,
that. But usually on Saturdays we'll be here from 3 Eastern time, and then we'll kind of go to almost 2 hours, almost to five. And we'll usually try to keep it around an hour and 30. It just depends on life and whatnot. And then after that, we should be good to do these from 12 to 2, Monday through or Sunday through Friday, correct? Kind of
yes.
confirming. All right, cool. And we'll have that in the on the Twitch so you guys can see the schedule. We'll kind of keep doing these because honestly, he has an amazing voice and I like talking. So I think it goes hand in hand with our situation right now. And then we'll also game. You'll hear us game. He has a PC. I don't. Do you have an Xbox? I think you do. Do you?
I don't. I have zero consoles. My oldest daughter stole my only console.
I feel you there. I feel you there. Yep. So on that note, guys, definitely catch you guys later. Stay here if you were here. If you're a mod, please stay here. If you subscribe, please stay here. I'm gonna do the ending credit. You guys are gonna see everything. And thank you guys for everything and meat and beans. If you don't mind, let them know goodbye as well.
Yeah, thank you guys for everybody or for listening and checking us out, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
One.